Yeah, that'll probably fit. Well, g'day guys. This year I'm going to build myself a workbench. Good solid joinery workbench, rock solid. And I'm going to put it right here between my bandsaw, my combo machine, and between the panel saw there. I think it's going to fit. It's going to be very tight, but I want it to be here so that when I do the YouTube videos, I can put the camera over there facing directly at me with the bench between the camera and me. That way you can watch what I'm doing from the front rather than having everything in from the side, because I've currently got a bench over there and a bench behind the camera there, and it's a little bit awkward to film. So I want to put a rock solid joinery bench right here. I've also got a detailed set of plans available for purchase on my website. There'll be a link in the description below. There's 19 pages of technical drawings so far, and when I finish building this bench, I'm going to create a document detailing a full set of instructions with photos as we go along. So these plans used in conjunction with these videos alongside the instructions at the end, you'll be able to build your own OzzyOcker. Now what's an Aussie? Well, I'm an Aussie. What's an ocker? I'm an ocker. An ocker is an uncultivated Australian man. Yeah. Now inside this box I have some goodies. Got a couple of Gramercy holdfasts. Got myself a HNT Gordon tail vise with a 100mm stroke. That means the little dog goes backwards and forwards 100mm. And the granddaddy of them all, a HNT Gordon face vise. This is sweet, this is so awesome. So that'll be the hardware that I'll be using for this bench. It's very, very nice hardware. It really is really nice. I'm really happy with it. So first up, we want to build ourselves a full-size scale template for the front and back frames, because the legs are slanted out slightly. Now the reason why I've slanted out the legs slightly is that it will resist a little bit of racking when I put the hand plane across it and start pushing along the length of the board. But for the most part, it makes the bench just have a more imposing stance about it. Like if I stand up here like this, I'm like, big deal. But if I spread my legs just that little bit, it's just a more dominant stance. It just looks better. I'll even put a computer image up there and you can see that it changes the design aesthetic by a drastic amount. So that's why I've angled those legs out just that little bit. But in doing so, it makes the build slightly more complicated. So we'll start off with a full-size template. So here, I have a 9mm thick sheet of MDF, cut to the approximate size. It's a little bit over, doesn't really matter how long it is, so long as I've got a nice straight edge on the bottom and a nice square edge on the side. The other two sides doesn't matter that much, so long as I've got two straight edges to start with, or two square edges to start with. So that there is the front view of the bench. That's with the top on there. Now the top has an overhang either side, and the overhangs are slightly different. But the base frame itself is perfectly symmetrical through this center line here. So that there is a mirror image of that there. So to start off with, we're going to measure out the center of our MDF sheet and mark a center line. That becomes our reference point, because all of our measurements will be made from the center line out to this point, and then the center line out to that point. And that gives us points in space to be able to connect the dots to draw what we need to draw. I've already got my center line roughly marked in, so I'm just going to make it a little bit darker so that I can see it clearly, because this is not the first time I filmed this. Truth be told, I filmed this down on the ground and you saw a little bit too much of me. Plumber crack, anybody? Now these plans, they've been designed with a set length in mind. So the length of this bench in the plans is 2100 long, 900mm high and 660mm deep. That might not work for you. You might be saying that's a little bit too small or a little bit too big, whatever. With this template here that we're about to make, this is where you can make your adjustments to suit yourself. So because these plans are set up for 2100 long, you might say you only want it 1800 long. So you're going to have to reduce everything on the horizontal by 300 millimeters. Therefore, whatever the measurement is between from that center point out to that edge, you need to reduce that by 150 millimeters on each side, which reduces the whole frame by 300 millimeters. Then you put the top on there, which is also 300 millimeters shorter, and you've shrunk everything by the 300 millimeters, keeping in line with the styling. Now, because I'm going to build exactly what my plans are, I can just copy the numbers exactly, no measurements or no calculations needed. So I have the plans with the numbers here, this one here, and when I draw this, I'm going to draw it, that's right way up, I'm going to draw it upside down. That way any extra can go up onto the bottom of the legs. So if you wanted to make adjustments to the height of the table or the bench, you can actually just add more material to the bottom of the legs and move that rail up or down towards the bottom of the legs to adjust everything on the fly. That's how we adjust the plans to suit our own personal circumstances. So to begin with, on the top of the legs there is a tenon on both of the legs there. That's going to sit up inside the top to locate the top and stop the top sliding around on top of the frame. So whatever that distance is here, we're going to mark a line from the bottom of my sheet up, and that will form the base or the top of the legs here, as well as that top rail there. Now, because my longest ruler clearly isn't long enough to span that distance, when I ripped this sheet on my panel saw, it gave me a straight edge on the sheet as well as a straight edge on the offcut, which is funnily enough long enough to span the whole length. So I can use this as a straight edge to mark out what I need. So I'll put that on that mark, put it on the other mark, make sure it's all perfect. So that line there forms the top of that top rail there. Now I can draw in the bottom of my legs. And when you draw the bottom of the legs in, I would recommend drawing it as per what my plans are. And if you want to make your bench higher or lower, you can just extend the line through the 2 points and keep on going and then chop it off wherever you want. So my bench is at 900 millimeters high, which is about an inch higher than what this bench is at the moment, because this is a little bit too low. This is lower than what my panel saw is, because when I cut a sheet, it sits over the top of this bench and I can't have this be too high. But over there, it should be okay in this joinery bench, so I can lift it up to my 900 mil, which is my desired height. You might want to bring it up to 925 or 950, or you might want to go lower to 850, whatever. You can do that just by chopping off the legs later or earlier. I can't see. So now I've got this line across the top here. I've also got the line across the bottom of the legs there. So now if I measure out from this center mark here to that point there, same again, the center mark there to that point there, same on the other side here and here, that will give me 2 points in space, which will allow me to draw in this line here and here. Now I extended that line up past that baseline just in case you wanted to make the legs a little bit longer. You can cut them off here or here or here, wherever. I'm going to be cutting it off at my baseline there though. So now with our external box created, we now can draw in the width of the legs, which can be whatever you want. If you want them 5 inches wide, you can mark in a line from that edge there to here, 5 inches, or if you want them 6 inches, you can make them 6 inches or 8 inches, whatever you like. Same again with your top rail, from this top edge here down, you can make it 4 inches or 5 inches or 6 inches. Again, whatever you like. And then there's a distance between here and here. Now that is a distance for where your feet can slip under the bench so you can stand hard up against the bench. You don't want this to be hard down. You don't want this rail here to be hard on the ground there, because every time you walk up to it, you'll stub your toes into the bottom of the rail here. You want your feet to be able to fit in under this gap there. So that distance there for me is going to be 90 millimeters. It's enough that my feet fit comfortably under there, but it's not so high up that my feet actually can't hook up under the rail there. So if I start to fall backwards for whatever reason, I can hook my feet in under the rail and I can catch myself. You may want to make it higher though, because that way if you make it 200 millimeters up from the ground, let's say here, you can get a broom in under there if you wanted to. But when I clean up under a bench, I just get a stick or my ruler, slide it in under there and then scrape out all the rubbish out of there. So now I've got the outside drawn in, I've got that leg drawn in, that rail drawn in, that side of the leg and the underside of that rail. The last thing I need to draw in is at the top of this leg, or between the leg and the top rail intersection, I've actually squared that rail off here, which means the top of the leg has a slight taper to the top of it so that it ends up square. Now I want to bring that squareness down below that rail, down 10 mil below that rail. So the leg will be square at the top and then start to angle off down the bottom 10 millimeters below where that rail finishes. You can't have that point there be the exact intersection there, because you'll never get it right. If you give yourself 10 millimeters worth of leeway, you'll be able to get it done, and it doesn't really matter if it ends up being 8 millimeters or 11 millimeters. It doesn't really matter. You're not going to be able to see it. But as far as seeing it goes, that's the whole reason why I've done this, because it looks a little bit better to square this off here and have this one taper down. It just creates the design aesthetic just that little bit. It just changes things just that little bit. And it makes it look really nice. And so now that's done, we've got our right leg, our left leg, our lower rail and our top rail. Now we can use this template to build exactly what we need to build. Now, this template may not be exactly perfect. It may be shifted to the left or to the right just a little bit. It should be pretty close to where it needs to be, but it might be this way or that way. That's okay, because when we build the two frames, so we've got a front frame and a rear frame, if you've got your fingers pointing the same direction, if you build one, the front frame tilted that way a little bit and your back frame tilted that way a little bit, that's okay because they're both the same. But you can't build them, the front frame tilted that way a little bit and your back frame tilted the other way a little bit, because that way you put a great deal of twist through the frame, and that's a really bad thing. If they're both tilted that way a little bit, when the top goes over the top, it won't sit exactly level to the ground. It'll be out by like 0.1 of a degree, which is, you're not going to notice it, but it won't be perfect. That's okay, because you're not going to notice it, but you will notice it if you twist the frames. So when we build these frames, we're going to build the frames directly on top of this template here, and I'll build the front frame face down and the back frame face up. That way they both become a mirror image of each other. So that's it there. This is now our Bible. Our plans, which can be purchased down on my website with the link in the description below, is guidelines now. This becomes our Bible. This is a guideline. This gives you the rough estimates. This is what we're going to build from. So you've seen that if you wanted to make your bench bigger or smaller, you can take the measurements from the plans and just add whatever you want to make it longer, or subtract whatever you want to make it shorter, and everything just adjusts accordingly because we've measured everything off a center line. Same on the height. If you wanted to make it longer, you simply shoot those legs down lower and move that bottom rail down, and it brings the whole bench up higher. But this is pretty close to being my working height. It's actually going to be about here, and that's about right. That's where I'd hold a hand plane. So in the next video, that will be all about milling the material, gluing up the tops, getting everything ready, so that afterwards we can start getting the mortise and tenons cut into the legs, into the rails, get these frames assembled, and let's go into it. So really enjoying this build. I haven't looked forward to a woodworking build for a long time, but this bench, I've been planning it for months, and I just can't wait to get really stuck into it. So stick with me, subscribe to the channel, give me a big thumbs up if you like, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, catch us later.